Hi, I'm Carrie Lee Merritt. Welcome to Merrittocracy. Today I'm here with Andrew Seidel, a constitutional attorney and the Director of Strategic Response for the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Now, he is the author of this brand new book, The Founding Myth: Why Christian Nationalism is Un-American. And this book already has only been out a few weeks. It's already on the Amazon bestsellers list in a few categories, really. I think constitutional and, you're all over the place, so congratulations.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I know you've already done a good bit of PR for this book, and we're going to get into more about what the book is about. But I wanted some of this interview to just get into your past and what drew you to this line of work. There are not a whole lot of people that become constitutional attorneys.
It's a pretty small club.
Yeah, very small once you get to a certain level, especially. What drew you to constitutional law?
Well, in particular, I wanted to focus on the First Amendment and really the separation of state and church, because there are actually 6 different rights that are protected in the First Amendment. You could easily specialize in any one of them. But I wanted to focus on the separation of state and church for a couple of reasons. One, I've never really done well with bullies. My mom loves to tell all these stories about me standing up to them in elementary school and stuff, and I wanted to use my law degree to help do that. Mm-hmm. And I also wanted to further some of the progressive ideals that I cherish. And keeping state and church separate is kind of a silver bullet for many of the issues that I deeply care about. Women's rights, LGBTQ rights. If you can keep religion out of the government and government out of religion, you can really solve a lot of the issues that are facing our country today.
It's especially relevant right now. So this book is obviously hitting at a very, very good time to be relevant. What you're writing about, as you said, has always been relevant, but right now it seems like we're kind of at a crisis, and I think that people will get a lot from this. So tell people a little bit about how you came to this topic. You are trained as a lawyer, you have a master's essentially in law, but how did you come to write what's essentially kind of a history book in some ways?
So one of the arguments that we constantly hear back in trying to fight state church violations, trying to get public school teachers to stop praying with their kids or public high school football coaches to stop praying with their teams, is that, well, we are a Christian nation, so we are allowed to do this. And so that was really where this started for me. I heard this argument that we're a Christian nation and kind of wanted to push back against it. And the more I researched it and understood it, the more I realized this was going to be something bigger than just, a short law review article. And ever since then, I've been working on the book for about 10 years, and I got lucky and the country got really unlucky because Trump really did make the book more relevant than it otherwise would have been.
That's the same as with my book. All of a sudden, we're talking about poor people. All of a sudden, we're talking about Christian nationalism. And so a lot of our viewers probably have heard the term Christian nationalism, but don't necessarily know what exactly it means, if you can just explain that at a basic level.
So Christian nationalism is based on this common well of lies and myths that we constantly hear from President Trump and Vice President Pence. It's the idea that not only that we're founded as a Christian nation, but we're in God we trust, one nation under God, that the Declaration of Independence references our Creator 4 different times, that the delegates at the Constitutional Convention prayed. And most of this is wrong. I really wanted to do a better job of debunking the history, not just with facts, but also with better arguments. And that's why I kind of dove into history, even though I'm a lawyer.
And so did you actually get into the archives, or were you primarily going into histories that had been written about our founding fathers by historians?
It started off, reading other historians for sure, and not other historians, because I'm not a historian. I'm more of a street brawler in this battle, I think. So I started off reading those, but then I went to the original sources. Mm-hmm. And any quote in here that is from a founder, I found an original source, not relying on somebody else.
So you are doing primary research. You are technically a historian here.
And then there is some new research in here too that I'm hoping to publish at some point as kind of like a standalone article. This is obviously a very controversial claim that I make in the book, that Judeo-Christian principles are opposed to America's founding principles. So I knew it was going to get picked apart. And so I really wanted to do a great job of shoring up my history. So I actually hired two attorneys at different points in my research to attack the notes from my opponent's standpoint. And I gave them a bounty for every error that they could find or every misrepresentation that they thought I made.
Right, so it's almost like a version of peer review for a trade press book, which is something that anybody writing a nonfiction topic, especially one that delves into history or law or any kind of area that you really need expertise, you need some kind of vetting process. And so what Andrew did is incredibly smart and good to know. This thing is filled, just filled with footnotes, very well documented, very well researched.
I don't know if you typically pay your peer reviews in liquid
There you
form.
go.
That was how
There
I
you
did
go.
it. Writer's Tears Irish Whiskey was their payment of choice.
There's a whole lot of people reviewing in the history profession that would probably prefer to be paid.
It seemed appropriate.
Right. So you addressed a little bit about what brought you into constitutional law, but then what brought you into really looking at religion and Christian nationalism per se?
What I wanted to examine in the book is this claim that you kind of hear all the time but has never been really looked at. The idea that we're founded on Judeo-Christian principles. And that's a really vague and nebulous term. And I think that's part of the reason it's never been examined or even challenged. So the question that I ask in this book is, did Judeo-Christian principles positively influence the founding of the United States? And the answer to that is no. And not only is it no, but it's a good thing that they didn't influence the founding of the United States, because those principles are really fundamentally opposed to the principles on which our nation was built. And that's the claim that I make in the book. And I think it is a little controversial, but I think I've got the stats and the figures and the research to back it up. So I feel pretty good about it.
Now, of course, the people that are going to be pushing back against this book, they don't care about stats and figures and footnotes, right?
Yeah.
And your job title actually is Director of Strategic Response. And so you should kind of already know how to gear up and be ready for the attacks that are surely going to come, right?
Facts are not enough. Otherwise, we would not have President Donald Trump, because this argument has been around for a long time. And before the 2016 election, Christian nationalism was this impotent sideshow. It was on the conservative fringe of politics and the conservative fringe of religion. But Donald Trump really rode this wave into public office, the highest office in the land. So what I try to do in the book is not just address the factual errors, but also give new arguments for why Christian nationalism is wrong and hit back at an emotional level. The goal is to completely and utterly destroy the Christian nationalist identity. So it's a lofty goal, but it's what I'm going for.
Knowing what Christian nationalism is, it seems like it absolutely has to overlap with white supremacy, right? Or white nationalism of some sort, because I mean, it's a xenophobic movement at its core.
You can really see this actually in the Roy Moore-Doug Jones election. We often talk about evangelicals supporting Trump, but it's white evangelicals that supported Trump. And they voted for Roy Moore at more than 80%, but then black evangelicals voted for Doug Jones at more than 95%. And that's why it's really critical to talk about Christian nationalists as their own thing, because it's something different. And we don't ask people at an exit poll for voting, are you a Christian nationalist? And most people would say no to that anyway. It's really just the belief that we're founded as a Christian nation that we need to return to that. But I think there's a pretty massive overlap between white nationalism and Christian nationalism. And there are a lot of writers now that are just lumping them together and saying white Christian nationalism.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. So it's that intertwined.
I think it really is, yeah. There are quite a few examples of that in the book. I also talk about Christianity's role in the abolition movements and in opposing abolition and in the segregation debate and civil rights debate. Christianity had a role on both sides of those, but really the wrong side had the better theological argument, unfortunately.
That's right. The pro-slavery men got it right, biblically, right?
Yep. I mean, it's in the Ten Commandments twice. So.
And so many people, it sounds like, actually believe that our Constitution talks about God. Right? That's one of the biggest misconceptions among people in America.
It's this entirely godless and secular document, and it was deliberately done that way and criticized at the time for being godless.
Right, because many historians have recently shown that a lot of these founding fathers weren't even what you can classify necessarily as Christian. They were more deists or, kind of universalists.
And I have a couple of chapters on the religion of the founders in the book. And really where I landed on this was that It's a fascinating debate to have, and I love talking about it and investigating it. But it kind of doesn't matter to the question of whether or not we're a Christian nation, because what you have to do is look at the principles of their supposed religion and see if the nation was based on those. And even if they are all Jesus rose from the dead, Bible beating Christians, it doesn't prove that they based the nation on the principles of their religion.